Hello. So last year I made the active choice to not set goals. And here we are 1 year later, and I'm just going to reflect on how that went for me and I guess what I've decided to do this year in 2026. So for context, a quick little overview. Last year I made this video on how I wasn't going to set goals for 2025. I told myself I was going to set themes, and that theme was going to be the glue or the guiding principle in any decisions or actions I took. The themes that I had set last year were kindness, so to be the most kind version of myself to myself and those around me. And the other theme was to be the most authentic version of myself. So how I show up in my work, how I show up in my personal life, just try to be as me as possible, no matter how quirky or whatever. Now, the rationale behind not setting goals last year was I had basically hard reset my life in 2025. At the start of last year, I got out of a long-term relationship, moved across the continent, was committed to this path as a full-time creator, and essentially surrounded myself around all these new people because I had to make friends from the ground up again. The 2 years prior had been the most chaotic time of my life. So many life changes happened and I felt like I was speedrunning life. I won't bore you with all the details in this video, but essentially last year was the year that I finally really had full freedom into where I put my time and energy. And with all that momentum, opened up all these different doors for different things I could do. Would I keep making content and try to grow my account? Would I try to make a business of sorts and explore ideas for physical products, digital products, whatever it may be? Or who knows, maybe I would explore and experiment with something else. There were so many different paths that I could take, and setting goals I worried would limit me at the time. Because I had no clear end goal of what I wanted to be doing, and because it felt like a year to just process all the changes and emotions that had happened the 2 years prior, I just let go of all pressure to set specific concrete goals because I didn't want to feel like I was getting pigeonholed. I was scared of committing to a specific path or a specific goal in case that would close me off to other opportunities or things that maybe I wouldn't have even thought of before. Now, to reflect on how that went, I think the themes that I set for myself were really good in a sense that they're things that even now I feel like I want to carry over. Kindness and being my most authentic self. The issue with that though is it's very broad, and although I feel like I was able to show up as the kindest version of myself and the most authentic version of myself, it felt like it didn't equate to anything heavy or tangible. Not saying that all goals have to do that, but there is a sense of satisfaction that you get by being able to check off something more concrete. For the first half of the year, not having goals was actually really nice. It allowed me to just continue working at my craft, continue making videos, and just settle into this new life. I did a lot of self-discovery, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of which is shared in previous videos on this channel. But by the second half of the year, I started to feel a little bit like I was dragging my feet. I think the slowness of the year started to catch up to me, and I started to feel like, should I be doing more? But the thing is, I didn't really know where I wanted to pour my time and energy into. And so I feel like I was sitting in this messy middle for quite a while in the latter half of the year where I felt creatively stuck. I realized that there's a lot of things that I told myself I wanted to do and explore, but I just simply wasn't doing that. The motivation to act on an idea wasn't there because I felt like I had all these things piling up in the backlog. By the end of the year, I had realized that when I look back at all the previous instances in my life where I've worked really hard at something and had the most success, pretty much all of those times were when I had something specific that I was working towards. So for example, in my university years, that was running this organization to help empower women in STEM. Committed a lot of time and energy into that, had a really clear why behind what I was doing, and spent pretty much all of my free hours in that thing. And I feel like that really compounded. Fast forward a few years, I did that again with the first startup that I ran that was kind of in like the B2B SaaS space, super random. It was like during the pandemic, it was some software that would help people onboard interns And even with content creation, I found that when I finally really started to hack away at it and really start to have the intention of wanting to level up my skills, that's when I really started to see the progress and the benefits of focusing on one thing. I realized for me, having something that feels like it has purpose and a greater meaning, and just having this bigger project to attach myself in, is kind of where I thrive the most. That's where I feel like I see the most progress. Anyways, all this to say, going into 2026, here is kind of how I'm thinking about the year. Here's my theme of the year, and I guess, yeah, what I'm doing to motivate myself this year. So the first thing is that I am going to keep a theme still, because I do like the idea of themes, but I am going to pair that with goals, which we'll get to in number 2. So for number 1, the theme of last year, again, was kindness and being the most authentic version of myself. That is still something that I feel like is like embedded in here now. But I think the theme I want to focus on this year is to make something heavy, is to make heavier things. I'm not 100% sure if this is a good theme. In fact, who knows, maybe I will change the theme midway through the year. But the theme of making something heavy means investing a lot of time and effort into larger projects. I think especially as a short form content creator, a lot of the times the work that I create feels fleeting. It is literally swipeable, or like you kind of forget about it within like a few days or like a week, I don't know. And so I want to make something that feels more lasting, more tangible, something that will stick around. So when I make decisions on projects that I do or ideas that I want to take on, I'm going to think of that theme of making something heavy and letting that compound. So who knows, maybe the theme is compounding. I don't know. Moving on to number 2, goals. I do want to set goals this year, but as I've again talked about in a previous video, I think there are many ways that goals can be a bit misleading or can be very demotivating. And to recap that quickly, that is usually when you focus more on outputs rather than inputs, results versus the work that you put in. And so I want to focus on input-based goals. What are the things that I want to put out there versus what are the things that I want to receive in return? When we set goals, we often think things like, oh, I want to reach like 1,000 subscribers or whatever it may be. But again, you can't control that. All I can control is the inputs, how many videos I make, what work am I putting in. I can't control the outcome or the result. So tying into the theme I just mentioned, the goal is to make something heavy, and perhaps I'll reveal what that project is, and you'll see it very soon on this channel. But the goals are very much so related to that project and getting that big project done. I guess my intention of the year is to do the best work of my career, whatever that means. And so to do that, I have to actually finish that thing that I'm doing. Kind of building onto the goals thing, I guess I have a mix of like work or creative related goals, but then I also have personal goals. Like one of my personal goals this year is to run a half marathon. I know everyone in their like mid to late 20s starts running marathons and doing all that, but you know what? I'm gonna jump on the bandwagon because it's good for the health and for character building. Yeah. Sorry, I'm like readjusting because my legs are falling asleep. In terms of what else I'm doing to set up for this year, I think I'm still kind of in the process of building out those systems and just how I want to stay organized. Last year, I started using a physical planner for the first time in many years, and I have once again brought that back this year because I do really like having a tangible list. I also have a whiteboard, which I honestly don't use as often as I should, but that is something that I'm trying to use more often as well. And then I always have Notion, and Notion is just where I usually track day-to-day tasks. That's where I do a lot of my work stuff. I guess to summarize this video, I'll answer the question that some of you might be thinking of, which is, do I think it was a bad idea ultimately to not set goals last year? And my answer to that is no. I think that it was necessary for me to have that phase in time. Sure, I can always look back and be like, oh, maybe if I set goals, like I would have completed and done a lot more. But I think again, just given how crazy the years leading up to 2025 were, I think I really just needed a year to recalibrate and just let things go with the flow for a little bit of time. So no, I do not regret not setting goals last year. If anything, it made me more clear now on the goals that I want to set this year. And for once in my life, now that I've decided to stay in one place and not be moving around every 4 to 6 months as I have been doing, I finally feel like I'm starting to see the benefits of having a home base start to compound. Because now, as I want to do this heavier work, I'm not worried about where am I going to be in the next 4 months or 6 months. I know that this is my home base here, and it allows me to focus a little bit more on the work that I want to get done instead of, yeah, where am I going to move? Where am I going to live? So who knows? Maybe you're in a phase of time or a season of your life where you don't need to set goals right now. Maybe it just doesn't feel like the right timing, or maybe you don't know what goals you want to set. Or who knows, maybe you are similar to me where you realize that it is time to set some goals. Hopefully they're input goals rather than output goals, because again, I'm telling you, it'll save you so much turmoil and stress. Because when you know that you're controlling the things that you can control, it just makes life like a little bit easier. I already forget what I was saying, I digress. But regardless, whatever you choose, whether you choose to set goals, themes, intentions, whatever it may be for this year, I hope that you remember why you did what you did. Why you decided to set up the year in the way that you have been. Because who knows, maybe you'll be the one making a video like this next year, talking about how you did or didn't set goals. Ooh, but going back to the goals piece for a quick second, I guess if I were to summarize my goals, make something heavy, write a Substack essay once a month. That is a big goal of mine. Literally just like a digital archive of my 20s. I'm gonna write about whatever is top of mind for me that month and try to commit to it for a full year. I've never been consistent with writing, so this is like a huge input goal of mine that I want to complete. If you want to find my Substack, you can. It is in the description of this video. And then another goal I have is literally just to stay healthy. Last year I had my first health scare ever, I guess, and that was not fun. So I think this year I definitely want to prioritize making sure my health is in check. Yes. But anyways, if you stayed and watched this far, thank you for listening to me ramble as my dinner cooks over there. It's been a while since I made one of these yap videos, but I'm curious, what goals did you set this year, or did you not set goals? Let me know. But with that being said, I'll see you in the next one.